In the rolling hills outside Echo, Oregon, it's early September, and the red onion harvest is underway. Jake Madison is a fourth-generation farmer here, 3 hours east of Portland. His great-grandparents started the farm back in 1914 with 160 acres of dryland wheat. Now, Jake owns a farming operation that spans 10,000 acres. He loves the land and carefully tracks how much fertilizer is applied to each crop.
Like on these onions, we come out and we pull tissue tests. We pulled like 8 to 10 soil and tissue tests during the key periods from the 1st of June through the end of July. And
that's all designed to see how much
exactly
fertilizer you need or don't need, or
exactly
what's happening with
it.
it.
And we can track what it's using, what it's not using.
His fields and the others around here were carved by the great floods that swept down the Columbia River drainage from glacial Lake Missoula during the Ice Age. It left behind a combination of sand and silt and gravel, which now makes up the soil. It's perfect for growing onions and potatoes, but if too much liquid fertilizer is applied to this land, it can easily drain into deeper ground and reach the aquifer below. Fertilizer contains nitrates, odorless and colorless, in high levels dangerous for humans. It may cause miscarriages, thyroid disorders, birth defects, and cancer. In northern Morrow County, the soil is primed for leaching liquid into the aquifer below. This map reveals the challenging conditions. Red shows the high chance of fertilizer with nitrates leaching into that groundwater. Boardman, Iragon, and Umatilla have some of the worst soils for that. Farms cover 180,000 acres in this area. Jake, over in Echo, faces a moderate risk. Still, he does extensive testing to keep his fertilizer out of that aquifer.
You know, we know how every inch of water that's going on the field, we know where it's going. We know every pound of nitrogen that's going on every field. We know where it's going. We've got the soil tests on the front end and the back end to make sure that, you know, we can prove we're not leaching it everywhere. I mean, this isn't 50 years ago, right? From that standpoint, when everything was cheap, and if more was good, more is better. And so from that, you know, we manage and account for everything.
But, as he mentioned, it hasn't always been that way, and even today, most other farmers are not required to monitor their fields as closely as Jake. He's part of a special program. But for most of the 180,000 acres of irrigated farmland above the aquifer, there is no restriction on how much liquid fertilizer can be put on the land, no restrictions on when it can be applied, and since they're not regulated, there's no way to know how much liquid fertilizer is being used and whether any of it is continuing to leach into the aquifer. The result? The groundwater under a huge part of Morrow and Umatilla counties is contaminated with nitrates. Some areas contain dangerous levels. The potential contamination stretches over 562 square miles. As many as 12,000 people who get their water from backyard wells are in danger. Who polluted the aquifer? There's no individual culprit, but back in 2011, 3 state agencies studied the issue and found 3 main contributors. Researchers found that roughly 82% of the nitrates came from irrigated agriculture, basically those farmers using irrigation sprinklers. 8% came from pastures, probably fertilizers, along with animal waste as they grazed the fields. 4.5% came from food processors. Those are companies that wash produce brought in from the fields, then send that water back out to irrigators. Other sources include fertilizing lawns and leaks from septic tanks. A later version of the report separated out liquid manure that comes from places like feedlots called CAFOs. That lowered the number for irrigated agriculture, but you get the idea. Ag is still the elephant in the room. Researchers believe that farmers putting too much liquid fertilizer on the ground in the past played a big role in the contamination, but it's unclear if current farming practices are making things worse or maybe even better. And scientists are not able to clearly tell when looking at water samples if they're seeing nitrates from years ago or days ago, and whether it came from farming or something else. The state of Oregon has given lip service to doing something to help for a long time. A variety of state agencies are involved. The Department of Environmental Quality is technically in charge, but appears none of the agencies have taken ownership of the overall problem. As a result, the state has failed to make meaningful change for more than 30 years. In fact, the problem is now worse than before. This graphic shows with the arrows there where the pollution got worse from 1991 through May of 2016. Green arrows show pollution levels getting better. Boardman is to the left, Echo is toward the bottom right. The numbers were compiled using test wells across the area. 52% of the wells had increasing trends of pollution, 32% had decreasing trends, and 13% had no change. Over the years, irrigated farming has expanded in the counties. A former top DEQ official says that expansion is a big part of the nitrate problem.
It started with the advent of large-scale irrigation in this area. And then with the increase in agriculture, of course, then you get food processors to deal with the products that are being grown, and that creates wastewater that is also rich in nutrients. So we have both wastewater and fertilizer.
Mitch Wogamot is retired now, but he used to run the eastern region of Oregon for the DEQ.
Not any one farm is a problem, but when you have thousands of acres that are being irrigated fairly heavily and fertilizer put on it in these really porous sandy soils in this area, it's very difficult to keep it from leaching down into the aquifer.
In addition to farmers, nitrate water is spread on the land by the Port of Morrow. We know more about its use because it's regulated by the state with water permits. The port is a government entity located along the Columbia River near Boardman. Its purpose is economic development for Morrow County. It has docks and rail lines and an airport and cold storage and 4 industrial parks with attractive deals to lure companies to move there. It's also located along Interstate 84 and other major trucking routes. The port started 64 years ago, and it's wildly successful today. The Port of Morrow now has 46 companies located there. In a county with nearly 13,000 people, 6,300 jobs are directly or indirectly connected to the port. The companies combined pay more than $100 million in local and state taxes. Making any moves that would restrict its business is fraught with economic and political danger. Its largest tenant? Those companies involved in producing food. They use water to wash the onions or potatoes or other crops that pour in from local fields. After it's used, that water contains nitrates. The port collects the water from companies located at its sites and stores millions of gallons in these holding ponds. It also sends another 7 to 10 million gallons a day out to farm fields through a network of pipes. Some of the water is spread on fields owned by the port. Some of it goes to farmers, including Jake Madison. Jake is such a valuable outlet for the port that they built a pipeline from Boardman to his farm in Echo. It stretches 16 miles. 16 miles. While the process works for Jake, the port still has more wastewater than it can get rid of. The port has been reprimanded for dumping wastewater on fields during the winter when little is growing. With no crops, it's easier for that wastewater and nitrates to leach down to the aquifer below. This past June, the DEQ slapped the Port of Morrow with fines totaling more than $2 million for dumping wastewater in the winter more than 2,000 times. The port refused our request for interviews and a tour. But public documents show the Port of Morrow has promised to invest $200 million to help with the problem. It plans to build a huge storage lagoon and take other steps to strip much of that nitrate out of the water before it's sent out. During a candidates forum in May of 2023, put on by the Boardman Chamber of Commerce and posted on YouTube, Marv Padberg, who was a port commissioner at the time, said taking care of the nitrate problem will be a huge expense for the port.
First off, to take care of our nitrate issues, regardless of any of the other entities do anything, it's going to cost the port upwards of $500, $600 million bucks, maybe more than that.
It's unclear where the port will get that money. Back out on his farm, Jake Madison says stripping nitrates out of the water will not solve the bigger problem and is only going to cost him money. He'll need to buy more fertilizer for his crops.
I mean, I get it from the standpoint of, great, we removed the nitrogen from this water, but I still need nitrogen to grow the crops, so I'm going to go buy fertilizer to put on the crops now. So it's kind of like, okay, you didn't really change anything.